The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, thank you for joining this webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Ed Kalous, our founder and CEO.
Thank you all for attending today, and thank you all for continuing the care of our patients. Almost all of our locations remain open, while only a few have closed temporarily. Can someone mute their phone, please? Remember, the master value of the relationship between you and your patients is trust. And the master value in the relationship between the corporate office and its executives and our franchisees is also trust. We understand all of your concerns. I will continue by addressing what we can and will continue in open communication moving forward. COVID-19 is having multiple effects on your patients and our franchise system that have cost you some significant revenue. We plan to assist you with your fees. There will be a Q&A session where we will take your questions after I give you an example of how we are going to address fees in the future. But first, let's start with Brooks Edlin, who will update you on the government assistance program that was passed last night. Brooks?
Thank you, Ed. Yes, as we've gone through this ever-changing daily landscape, we updated you last week on a number of items. Today, given the fact that the stimulus package was passed in the Senate and hopefully will go through the House here shortly, I thought I would give you a brief summary of what the top points that pertain to our system and what we might be using, just to give you a brief update. Again, these are things that are changing. Nothing's approved finally, but this is what it looks like on the top surface. There's three main areas of the stimulus package that really pertain to your business, your employees, and so forth. They are a $350 billion package for small business loans. And to speak to that, this is separate from the disaster relief funds through the SBA that Andrew updated everyone on last week. This will be separate from that. And the execution of these loans will be forthcoming in terms of how they will be implemented. They will be distributed and funded through the SBA as well as local funding institutions and banks and so forth. again, more details on this that's forthcoming, but the amount of detail they're providing is that they're going to spread that out outside of the SBA in order for small businesses to get their funds quicker. The second part of the stimulus package that we wanted to talk about, which was also hit upon last week, was direct payments to individuals and families. You've probably heard a lot about this, but just to summarize, it's a $1,200 payment to individuals earning up to $75,000, or a $2,400 payment to couples making up to $150,000, with additional $500 for every child. The last portion of the stimulus package, which I think is significant and needs to be discussed, just because I think we're all facing tough times, is a $250 billion unemployment benefit. And this is going for, obviously, folks that are claiming unemployment. Current unemployment benefits range from state to state. That range can be as low as $200 to $550 per week. This unemployment benefit is aimed to add on top of that up to $600 per week. And this is what they were referring to in terms of they claimed it replacing salaries, obviously for a different level of individuals that would be receiving the additional $600. So as an example, in the state of Florida, unemployment benefits are $275 a week. An individual will receive up to an additional $600 per week on top of that. Those are the updates from the stimulus package that I thought were most meaningful for us today. Ed?
Thank you, Brooks. Now we'll hear from Randy on the latest marketing updates. Randy?
Okay, so before I get into the marketing updates, I just wanted to remind everyone to be looking at Medi News every single day. Please subscribe to get a copy of Medi News by email if you haven't done that already and it's better for you. Up here on the screen is an important update regarding your deliveries. So we just put a news post out, and FedEx is basically visiting a lot of locations, and we have that sign up that says we're closed or please text ahead, and they're actually returning the shipment to the sender. So of course that's going to cause a delay in you getting all of your shipments. So please go ahead and amend your signage. We did update the door sample flyer on Advantage, so that's all updated if you want to print out a new one, or you may want to just print out another sign that says open for deliveries or accepting deliveries. So just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. Next on the screen, you'll see a screenshot of all of the resources related to the COVID-19 situation that we've done. We've done all of these in about a week and a half. So thank you to everyone on the corporate team, and thank you to everyone in the field that's providing feedback and ideas. If you haven't looked through all of these resources, I really encourage you to do so. We do have our updated modified protocols. We have sample SOPs for curbside pickup, for telemedicine, and text on arrival. So if you are doing any of those, or you're thinking about doing any of those procedures, go ahead and download those sample SOPs, read through them, and update them for your location's needs. We also have the telemedicine medical documentation guidelines available, so please look at those if you're doing telemedicine, which most of you are. Next on the screen is a screenshot from the Medi Weight Loss Social Hub. So the marketing department has been putting together tons of content to allow you to keep in touch with your patients. So if you're not on Social Hub, contact any member of the marketing team. If you are on there, check that out and start scheduling some of these posts out so your patients stay in touch with you. The all-patient email blast goes out every Tuesday. So yesterday it went out. We're working on next week's, and that preview will be posted on Medi News. We're also, our team is still fulfilling all of your local requests for custom emails or anything that you need for your location. Of course, we're prioritizing all of the COVID-19 related requests. So if you need something, please tell the marketing department or tell your franchise consultant, and we will respond as quickly as we can. We also continue to develop all the relevant content related to this situation. So if you follow us on Instagram or on Facebook, you can see all the content that the marketing team is pushing out, and you could share those to your pages. All right, lastly, I just want to remind everyone that Dr. Sam Miguel is hosting a webinar on Friday all about telemedicine considerations for providers. So I put that up on the screen. Please register for that. It's on Medi News. It's on the Medi News calendar, so you can register for that webinar or encourage your providers to register.
Thank you, Randy. Derek and Dr. Sam Miguel will now discuss our importance to our patients during this time, especially. She will also thoroughly explain the essential nature of Medi weight loss. I think Derek will handle that. And Dr. Sam Miguel will then discuss telemedicine. Derek?
Okay, Randy, is my slides up?
Yes,
Shelter in place.
you're up.
Wonderful.
You're up.
Okay, hello everyone. What I did here on the first page is to show you, this came in actually last night from a friend of mine, franchise owner in Connecticut, kind of showing us and wanting to show everybody what's happening in many of these states and counties now that have shelter-in-place orders. Believe it or not, there are public officials going around putting flyers up on certain businesses. This one happens to be a salon and barbershop, and you can see the public notice. But it's pretty scary to see those things when they happen. But you should fully understand that shelter-in-place orders are occurring. So to combat COVID-19, we're seeing state and local emergency orders that are closing many workplaces. So I thought it would be appropriate to spend a little bit of time and talk to you about steps that you can take to be prepared. When these things happen, it gets a little nerve-wracking, so we should spend a little time talking about how to prepare for it. All right, let me, okay, so the best way for us to become prepared for a shelter-in-place work order is to first understand that essential businesses are exempt from such orders, or typically exempt from such orders. So we need to understand, well, what constitutes an essential business? You start looking around, trying to figure out what does it mean to be an essential business, and you find yourself at the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. DHS is the federal department that actually identifies what essential critical infrastructure is in order to assist state and local officials with strategic guidance. So they basically help define what essential businesses are, and they don't mandate it, but they suggest to the states to look at their definitions and to use their definitions as support for the states when making decisions. So basically, if you go to the Department of Homeland Security, you'll find out that there is a designated list of businesses and organizations that provide essential services and workforces. These are the critical infrastructure type workers. Now, understanding that, if you want to look at your own state orders, I've got California in there twice by accident, but you got California, Illinois, Mass, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Ohio, Louisiana. We got counties now coming online fairly quickly, Mecklenburg, North Carolina, Tarrant County, Texas. Sure, there's going to be more to come, but what you see is that these orders somehow are related or incorporating or using the same language as the Department of Homeland Security has when they develop this essential critical infrastructure concept. So these things either footnote the DHS or they incorporate the definition, or they use similar language that's in there. What I want to caution you on, though, is that states do have the power to change the definition. It's not like a mandate that actually comes from the government. This is all recommended language, and I do expect that you'll see some revising and refining of definitions. We've seen it already in a few of these areas where they might actually say that medical spa might not actually be an appropriate business. So there is a chance that to see more specific definitions crop up in the near future in certain states. So you got to be prepared for all this. You got to educate yourself on the Department of Homeland Security, what your state emergency order says, and how you can actually deal with it. So when I talk about the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, believe it or not, there's the department in there that we all should know. They're called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. CISA is the one that defines essential critical infrastructure workers. You don't have to look at all these little blurbs up there on your screen. Just know that healthcare and public health is in the top one of the top ones. Food and agriculture is in there. You know, your police going to be in here, your government facilities, financial. Lots of these are the industries that are critical to our society and deemed that way by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And the good news is healthcare is one of the most important, as well as food and agriculture, as you can imagine. So just so you could get a better visual on this, I basically took these categories, 15, but these are the 14 that I think you can understand real quickly. And healthcare and public health, food and agriculture are the ones that we...
An in-depth consultation with each patient. Our medical staff...
So healthcare and public health, food and agriculture are the ones that we're going to dive into and determine exactly what they mean when they say that. When we go to the federal government to figure out what does it mean healthcare is an essential service and food is an essential service. Let's see. Oh, it jumped ahead on me. So what we get here is healthcare, public health. If you dive into the definition, it covers caregivers. And what's neat about that is it's pretty broad when we talk about healthcare being one of the pillars of our society. It's physicians, mid-level practitioners, nurses, and assistants, and the people that help them out. So healthcare is definitely an essential business and service. Pharmacy employees, these are just examples of what's actually listed in this federal government rules on essential services. Also is food and agriculture. I find this one fascinating in that pharmacies, pharmaceutical companies, grocery, food products, all that is essential to our society. So businesses that provide pharmaceutical supplements, groceries, businesses that support those companies are all essential. And that's very important. We have a lot of out there, supplement vendors that can continue to keep their businesses open, even in one of these stay-at-home orders. Okay, to provide you comfort that you know that I'm not just shooting from the hip here, I wanted you to take a look at this March 19th letter from CISA, again, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, under the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I realize it might be difficult for you to read what's on that screen, so I'm making the bottom paragraph pop out a little more, and I'm going to read it to you. If you work in a critical infrastructure industry, as defined by the Department of Homeland Security, such as healthcare services and pharmaceutical and food supply, you have a special responsibility to maintain your normal work schedule. I wanted you to see this because look at the letter. This is from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and it's a memorandum on identification of essential critical infrastructure work during COVID-19 response. I really wanted you to see this because these are the people that are advising the states on how to actually tell people what an essential business is. Healthcare is obviously one of them, and so is food. So let me conclude by covering a few things that we just went through. CISA, they're the ones that identify essential critical infrastructure under the Homeland Security. They specifically talk about healthcare and public health as being essential. They talk about food and agriculture businesses and the people that support those businesses as being essential. I have additional educational material because for some of you on the phone, these issues are going to be a lot more important than for some others, but we want you all prepared. So I do have the CISA memorandum. We'll give that to our FPC so that anybody looking for it can get a copy of the letter that I just put up on in front of your computer. And that comes with a guidance package, which talks about, clearly defines the healthcare essential businesses and the food essential businesses. And I've also we are currently preparing for dissemination as well, documents on how you can create like a sample Medi weight loss letter for your staff in case they need to go into the office and you've had a stay-at-home order. So we'll have an actual sample that's customizable to your business to help you in this times of having these types of orders placed in your states and counties. Well, to kind of wrap it up, I wanted to explain that even if you have one of these letters, it's not like the ultimate, get out of jail free card. Okay, you have to be ready to demonstrate that you've implemented procedures that comply with COVID-19 guidelines. You know, these public health officials that come around, they can understand the letter. A lot of businesses have them, but they're also going to want to see that you're in guidance, you're in line with on COVID-19. Things like 6 feet of separation for those that are around that business, 10 or fewer people in any particular space, regular sanitation, sending symptomatic people home. All those things are extremely important, obviously, during this time period where you're defined as an essential business. Now, I said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again, have a contingency plan if you can't qualify. If something happens, the state actually comes in and tries to redefine what is an essential business beyond what they've been told by the federal government, you need to be able to come in. You need to be able to have a contingency plan where people can actually work telemedicine from home. So I am going to now pass the torch over to Dr. San Miguel.
Hi. Okay. Thank you, Derek. So basically, I want to personally acknowledge and extend my respects to all the staff and providers on this call that have stuck it through with us during this time. I know a lot of us have family at home, and it's extremely tough to leave them, but it's also tough to work with them at home. So regardless of what work scenario you're in, it is tough times. And that being said, I am so impressed and proud to see how our staff here at corporate and the staff at the franchises across the country have just taken pride and ownership of what we do every day for our patients, and have just stepped up to the plate saying, you know, we are here. We want to see this through for ourselves, for the future of Medi weight loss, and most of all for our patients, even if it meant adapting to change every day. I know some people might think we are not essential, but, you know, we work in the weight loss we are not essential, but we do work in the weight loss industry. But in reality, that couldn't be farther from the truth. We work in the wellness industry, and for a lot of our patients, we are their lifeline. We are their last hope in being able to achieve wellness. And as providers and staff in the healthcare industry, we are truly what continues to keep the world go round in crises like this. And I think we've seen this every day. We have a unique opportunity to let patients know that regardless of the scenario, we will continue to be there for them. And that is what each and every one of you has done these past few weeks. And for that, you should be extremely proud of yourselves. To our franchise owners, my hat's off to you as well. It is times like these that we truly understand what it means to be a leader. Balancing a family, a business, financial uncertainty, and leading a team while at the same time watching out for their well-being is something you all have had to do on a daily basis. And although being the leaders that you are, this may seem like a no-brainer to most of you, it takes a lot of strength and character to do what you do day in and day out. And I believe I speak on behalf of all of us here at corporate. We are prouder than ever to do what we do and to have the privilege to work with a team as strong and as dedicated as all of you. I always say this too shall pass. And when it does, I strongly believe that we will come out stronger than ever, not only as a business, but as individuals and as a family. And speaking of outstanding leaders, now I want to pass the mic to two of our franchise owners for them to share with all of you how they have been doing telemed in their locations and their experience with the platforms and being able to integrate this with the goal of continuing to provide care for their patients. We'll start off with Curtis and then off to Kim Ploust. Curtis?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And are you just wanting me to give a general update on how it's all going? Just make sure I'm clear.
Yes, if you could. And a little bit about just how you've been doing it operationally.
Absolutely. So we are doing curbside pickup, and it's going great. People are still buying supplements, buying everything that they need to stay effective on the program. We are a dispensing location, so we are dispensing the medicine as well if they are a candidate for that. We are doing telemedicine visits. We did about 30 some of those yesterday. The first couple of days we kept the schedule a little lighter, but so far so good. Patients love it. There's operational challenges, just making sure the website works and all those other things, and getting used to just a whole new operations. But overall, I'd say our team's extremely positive about this. It seems to be something that's building. It's brand new, so we did get our first response from insurance companies, and it's starting to not make sense at all. In our state, there's an order from the governor saying that all of these would be covered at 100%, no copay or cost share. However, we're seeing it from Blue Cross Blue Shield with a copay. We're fighting with Blue Cross over that right now, and we'll keep the corporate team kind of in the know as that progresses. I think it's just Blue Cross needing to update their system, but just kind of wanted to give everybody advice there. I'd say, you really don't know, so I would continue to tell patients that, either we believe a copay would apply or we don't believe, depending on what your state is, and bear with us as we navigate these new waters. And I'd say for the most part, people seem to be responsive to that. Only other thing I'd say is, plan on longer visits. For some of these people, I think it's the first time they're talking to anybody. Now, the good news about telemed is that can advance your level of coding potentially. But we have noticed that patients, it's very easy. What used to be, maybe 15-minute visits are very easy to turn into 20, 25-minute visits. So, patients are definitely being very responsive and appreciative that we're taking all the steps we are to keep them safe, but they're so thankful we're there to talk to them. So I think we're all doing the right things by expanding and doing this. So anything else, Dr. San Miguel?
No, I think that's great. I think we want to just be able to let people know how others are doing it, to give them ideas, and maybe even encourage them to do things a little bit differently or just staying the way they are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Curtis.
Absolutely.
And Kim?
Kimmy, you muted yourself. If you could unmute yourself, that would be great.
How's that?
Good, perfect.
Great. Hope everyone's safe and sound out there, and I wish everyone's well with their families and being safe. We're seeing great results here in Mass, but I'm very humbled because I have an amazing team, and I'm humbled by them. They've done a hell of a job, and just I'm happy to say that they've been, they adapted when I woke up at 3:30 in the morning. And I said, okay, it's time to pull the plug, time to go forward, time to protect my staff, time to protect my patients, because for me and for our staff, we truly believe their health is our priority. So when we make that message in Mass, we believe that. So I made the call to close down. I did not close down, to move to telehealth very quickly, and I appreciate my staff adapting. and they did a phenomenal job. And the providers did a great job, and as they always do, because they care. And they care about their patients. I believe we are essential because I'm in the office every day. I see the patients with high blood pressure. I see the patients that have no hope. And when we were, when they were worried about us closing, they were so happy that they could be safe at home, and that we could still provide them the great quality of care through telehealth. I didn't know it until yesterday because that was our first day, and I have to tell you, out of 31 calls booked, we handled 30 calls. So it was fantastic because we saw no drop off, very little drop off compared to no shows that actually you book in the office. In Wakefield, we did over 105 calls yesterday and about 92 answered. So I think that's fabulous. I think the team did a great job. The doxy.com is very simple. And we simply said to our patient, if something gets interrupted, then we'll call you back by phone. But as long as we got to see them and they got to do a quick visual and it went down, then we could just call them back. So there'll be a few hiccups, but you know what? I've always believed to just go for things. Once you make a decision, you have to go for it. And so we did as many calls as we could. Tomorrow, I think they'll put up a screenshot. I have over 73 phone calls going out tomorrow, and we're excited about that. And we're doing curbside pickup. We sold over already $36,000 in 2 weeks because of this whole thing. So maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Curbside pickup was great. Sold over 800 on Tuesday. So a lot of good things are happening, and I'm just couldn't be more humbled by our team. I do think telehealth saves jobs, and I don't think I believe that should be an announcement. I believe that we should be humbled as providers, that patients would take calls to save our jobs. And my providers were beyond humbled. And at the end of the call, I could hear them say, just want to thank you. Your telehealth visit today saved jobs, and we appreciate it. So I'm all in. We're all in. I'm looking forward to, internally, I always believe we could handle the internal cuts to survive. I'm so excited now for the stimulus because the one thing we can't control as franchisors or franchisees is the external. But the stimulus package just insulated Medi weight loss. There's no better time in my life. And my dad, trust me, my dad and brothers, they know I'm tough. I'm only saying this because I truly believe it. We are insulating. And we are saving lives, we are saving lives because of telehealth, and we're saving lives because we can stay open. And that external stimulus package has just saved us because that's going to help many, many people. And I don't wonder at all that people eating right now and going crazy and stress eating, that in 2 months or a month, they are going to be craving Medi weight loss. And now they'll have the money to do it because the stimulus package will set them up. They'll be able to pay their mortgage, and jobs will be back open. And I'm very excited for the future, and I'm so proud of my staff. And you should be of yours. This is a stressful time for them. They are on the front lines. They've taken oaths to protect their patients. So remember to protect them and be grateful and humbled by who is serving your patients. Thank you all. I'm here for anybody. I've never closed my cell phone off to anybody. I've sent everything I have, and I will continue to do that. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Curtis, and thank you, Kim. So let me now discuss with you our fees. First, we have removed the 12-month rolling average. There is no more 12-month rolling average. Your fees are not going to be based on that. All fee increases are frozen. There will be no increases while we're in this particular situation. Bill Stickney and his team will monitor fees based on revenue on a monthly basis. The fees will be based on the actual revenue that the clinic receives. For that month, based on the tier that you are in. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. For those clinics that have revenue of $1,025,000, your fee normally is $10,416. But let's assume that when Bill looks at your fee at the end of the month, he notices that your revenue has dropped to $675,000. Your fee then will be based on the $675,000. or $7,250. We have also added a temporary tier for anyone below $300,000. That will be only $2,500 a month. We will answer any questions you have based on what I just said at the Q&A, and Bill Stickney will be publishing the monthly fee schedule this week. So look for that on Medi Alert or one of the other instruments that we use to communicate. Okay, let's talk about the questions, Randy. What is your first question, and who will be answering it?
Okay, the first question that came in is, will there be a national marketing campaign to help all the clinics get back on track with new patients when all of this is over? So I'll let you answer that one, Ed.
Oh, yes. I met with Randy this morning around 9:30 at the office, and we talked about a real serious campaign on Fox and Friends and on CNN as soon as this thing turns. And Randy is currently preparing that so that we'll be on those two TV stations talking about Medi and where we are. I also chatted with her briefly, and I'm not sure we're in a position to do it, but we're looking at maybe an interim Fox and Friends, something like saying Medi is still servicing 200,000, 100,000, whatever it is, patients. We'll get you through this, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, we are planning a marketing campaign once this program takes hold that the president's talking about opening up maybe even as early as Easter, although that sounds optimistic. Let's hope it is. Okay, Randy.
Okay, thanks, Ed. I look forward to working on that with you. The next question I have is for Brett, and it's a question about, are there any concerns regarding sourcing our medical supplies?
Yes, thank you. So as many of you know, we talked a little bit about Henry Schein on our last call as our preferred vendor. I have been in close contact and communication with our account representative, Mindy Eckhart. Spoke with her this morning about a few different concerns. So obviously, as many of you can imagine, the PPE supplies are in great demand globally. And because Henry Schein is one of the leading global medical supply vendors, they are getting replenishments on a regular basis. I would highly suggest, I know that Mindy's been in very close contact with many managers within the Medi system. I would just ask that you get in contact with Mindy. She's sourcing supplies as we have this conference call. If it's something that you need from a supply standpoint, your everyday needs, she has said that they are pretty stocked with most of the Medi supply list. John Kalous mentioned on the last call McKesson, so we are going outside of our preferred vendor when needed. So McKesson will be another option. There are some other smaller B2B supply vendors out there. Would highly suggest if you do not have contact information, please just send me an email. I'm happy to send you her contact information. She's done a fantastic job working individually on the need. All right, Randy.
Thanks, Brett. The next question is all for you. So we have a couple questions about e-prescribing. The first question is, are you working on a way to e-prescribe through Advantage? And what do you suggest for dispensing locations? So can you kind of run through our recommendation for prescribing during telehealth?
Yes, absolutely. So as many as you know, we have been working since last November with a company called RxNT for e-prescribing needs. I would just say for dispensing locations, if you are currently in a lockdown scenario, this would be your best option. Obviously, if you're in a lockdown scenario, you cannot do what Curtis alluded to a little bit earlier in terms of curbside and having things ready at the location. To make this very simple for the locations that would need to get up and running very quickly, just please contact your franchise consultant. We can contact the appropriate parties involved with RxNT and the other members that are involved in the process to get your account expedited as quickly as possible. That has been the best standard operating procedure and platform that we have put into place, and we highly suggest reaching out to your consultant with that assistance. All right, Randy.
Okay, this next question is for Dr. San Miguel. Some patients are calling in concerned that they're not able to get the foods they need to stay on the program. So, for example, lean protein and green vegetables. So, are you hearing anything about this, and what should we do in this case? Dr. San Miguel?
Okay, I was muted by, okay. Hi. So regarding this, I still strongly suggest that if the patients are in the acute phase, I do suggest that you have them go through, or you can even forward it to them, our approved lists of protein, because a lot of times we get into the habit, and it's human nature, is we get into the habit of what we typically have access to, and we forget what all is in that alternative list, right? All the approved proteins. One of the questions was if we recommended they go to 40-40-20. I don't recommend, I don't feel that's the first line of recommendation. I believe that if they can't get access to the fresh fruits and vegetables, that they go to either the frozen vegetables or even adding a protein or a healthy fat before they go to alternatives and start consuming carbs. It will halt their weight loss to a certain extent, taking them out of ketosis. So I do not recommend that this be the first line that we recommend to these patients. I do recommend, again, that they either add another protein, or if they can't get hands on fresh fruits and vegetables, or add the frozen variety, or a healthy fat, or even just looking at the list a little bit further to see what other alternatives they can get access to. I know that they will always have access to the cart, as well as maybe even curbside pickup from their location. So adding maybe more of the shake products or protein, signature protein, might be an alternative for these patients. But again, I don't encourage them to resort to carbs in this scenario.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next question is for John. John, will our malpractice insurance cover telehealth visits?
Yes, Randy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yes, we got notified today at 1 o'clock that telemedicine visits for our weight loss patients will be covered underneath our malpractice while this pandemic is still underway, without any fee change or amendment to the contract. So that was great news that we got today at 1.
Awesome. Okay, great. The next question is for Derek. Derek, in the case of a statewide order to remain self-quarantined, will we still be continue to utilize health remotely?
Okay. Can you repeat that question, Randy?
Yes. In the case of a statewide order to remain self-quarantined, will we still be able to utilize telehealth remotely?
Yes. Not really.
Excuse me, John? You got it. So the answer is yes. Telemedicine can be done remotely. In a statewide quarantine, you can even utilize when we have those shelter-at-home orders, right? You can even utilize the letter that I talked about, the fact that these are essential businesses, to have certain important staff at your location if necessary to do some of these visits. You could even have alternatives where you're doing staff at home from their offices. It's important to note, and I think this is what John might have been referring to earlier, that this is mainly for existing patients. We're basically looking at continuance of care issues that sometimes even trump state prohibitions against telemedicine. We've had a lot of wonderful come out temporarily removing restrictions on telemedicine. Things like the DEA, which doesn't allow you to do controlled substances without an in-person visit. Those have been suspended, as we talked about last week. That particular restriction on telemedicine, which has made our telemedicine typically invalid for our business. Those restrictions have been uplifted during the pandemic, only during the pandemic. They automatically go away after the pandemic, so keep that in mind. But for treating existing patients that are on meds, telemedicine is definitely something that all of our clinic owners have to consider. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does, and we'll stick with you for the next question. So there was a question about an informed consent. Do you have an update on if we need to do an informed consent differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is informed consents that are developed. We even have a copy of a sample one purely for telemedicine. There's a lot of odd little risks and benefits that come with telemedicine, and there's some state-specific requirements associated with telemedicine. The problem is during this pandemic, it's very difficult to have patients sign these informed consents. So I think the best, let's say the most practical aspect of this is maybe to read through a sample informed consent and discuss the potential issues with the patients so that at least they can be aware of it. Right now, I'm not aware of a great mechanism to have patients execute an informed consent. It could be very disruptive to these meetings to try to do so, and we're in this pandemic situation. So being aware that a lot of states require the informed consent and specific to telemedicine is smart. Understanding what those informed consents say, and maybe even incorporating some of the language into your discussions, your staff's discussions with the patients. That's probably the most practical way to handle this during this temporary period of time where we're relying on telemedicine for continuance of care issues.
Okay, great. The next question is, are there any landmines or major mistakes we need to avoid with telemedicine? So Derek, do you have anything you want to say for that question?
Yeah, I believe, let's not forget that, you guys are, say you guys out in the field, I mean, clinical is more important than everything else. Clinical decision making, making sure that somebody's gets a med who's appropriate, it's medically necessary for them to have the med and it's not going to hurt them. Number one is the most important, decision that anybody can make in our system. So I think when we talk about new patients, you can make a big mistake. Thinking that telemedicine is something for new patients is erroneous if you were thinking telemedicine allows you to somehow miraculously prescribe a controlled substance to somebody that you never met before, and you never had an in-person evaluation of them. That's dangerous, and that's why this word telemedicine is so confusing to everybody. Telemedicine could mean, prescribing somebody for a sinus infection, and it could mean prescribing a controlled substance. So seeing new patients, thinking that telemedicine is appropriate from a clinical standpoint, prescribing a controlled substance could be a real problem. I can understand using telemedicine, it being good medicine in clinical medicine for managing an existing patient that you've already put on a med and you already have that medical record established. I can understand, the continued touching these patients through telemedicine during this pandemic. And also, I think that also means, for those of you that think this is the new business modality, it's only temporary in nature. If you're prepping your patients that this is what it's going to be like 60 days from now or longer, you're going to make a mistake. Because we might be able to evolve other services in telemedicine, but controlled substances is not going to be something that we're going to do through telemedicine after this pandemic's over. Right now, there's a lot of state laws that don't even allow telemedicine to be utilized with controlled substances, but people are taking the position that continuance of care trumps those state laws, and that the DEA, the federal DEA, removed those same hurdles. So it's logical that for continuance of care purposes, you got to manage somebody on medications. It's safer than cold turkey putting them off them. So I guess there's a lot of things that could trip you up with telemedicine. Trying to rely on it too much as if it's the wave of the future right now, I think is a mistake. Although, who knows? Things might change in 90 days. But I think prepping your patients for a temporary, like next 2 visits through telemedicine, might be a smarter way to go. I think being very, very, very careful doing any prescribed controlled substances that for people that haven't had them before, that you maybe haven't managed yourself. I mean, we've got patient transfer issues and things like that come up where you might be trusting the medical records of somebody else, things like that. So there is. Keep in mind, clinical's more important than many of the legal things that someone like me discusses.
Yeah, and I wanted to also add, it's Dr. San Miguel, from a clinical aspect, I think providers understand that the most important thing to do during these times is to always use your best clinical judgment based on your experience and your education. I think we tend to be in kind of panic mode sometimes, and I think we have to take a step back and not forget to be the clinicians that we are and the educated providers that we are, and to rely on our professional opinion and of what we want to do. That being said, I always urge you to not set false expectations to patients on that where they're going to be or how they're going to be treated from now on. We don't want them to think that from now on all their Medi weight loss visits will be conducted through telemed, because in fact, in some states and even for the DEA, this would be illegal had it been done outside of the current COVID-19 situation. So it's really important that they also understand that in addition to that, most insurance carriers wouldn't even cover the telemed visit outside the COVID-19 times. So that's one of the things that I always tell the providers and recommend them to do, is just not to set any false expectations of, oh wow, telemed has come now to Medi and this is how we're going to do it from now on. But explain to them that this is so we can provide the care during these times, and that we will let them know as soon as we can start seeing patients in person again. That being said, I think Kim's recommendations of thanking them for being able to do and acknowledging for us to being able to do the visit through telemed is saving jobs, and most of all, it is saving lives. So really important for us to set the right expectations and not lead them in any way.
Okay, great. Dr. San Miguel, there are some questions coming in about vitals during a telehealth visit. I know that you're doing a webinar on Friday to go over some of the best practices and recommendations for providers, but can you add anything to this webinar about what to do for vitals, recording the vitals?
Sure. So, Randy, like you said, I do have a complete part of the webinar on Friday dedicated to this, but I'll go over some of the highlights. I would really consider asking some of your patients to get a blood pressure monitor. They can be purchased at local pharmacies or online. They typically run around $30. Make sure they know that just to read the instructions on how to properly use them. And again, this might not be something that all patients can or need to do, but definitely important in patients that have a history of elevated blood pressure or are on blood pressure meds. Remember that weight loss in some of these patients can cause that natural drop that we know about in blood pressure, and you're going to potentially need to decrease some of those medications. So if one of your patients, that's their scenario, then I would recommend that they do get a cuff. It doesn't have to be at that same visit that you're recommending it, of course. Just let them know that ideally they would have it for the next visit. And a lot of them have access to Amazon or to a local pharmacy where this can be delivered to their home. So those are my recommendations. Most of these blood pressure monitors also can record pulse, and that will help us a lot. Also remember that the stress of these times, like work and or loss and lack of thereof, right? Children, financial status, could all cause patients' blood pressures that were normal to suddenly rise. So that's important that we monitor as well. And if the patient even happens to have a pulse oximeter, a lot of times that shows at least the pulse, even if it does not show the blood pressure. And they're welcome to do this. Make sure that they know they're welcome to do this while doing their telemed encounter, or even at their own leisure, and then just letting us know. I think that would be the best possibility, because sometimes the telemed experience could make them nervous and transiently cause a rise in those readings. So those are my little recommendations and tips for being able to document vital signs on these patients. I am going to go a little bit more in depth on Friday, but I welcome any input as well to those who are already doing it.
Okay, thank you. This next question is for Brett. Will the franchise consultant still be available to help us with day-to-day issues during this time?
Thank you, Randy. Sorry about that. Not sure what that was. Just to be clear, the answer to that is absolutely. Myself and team are available. I would say even more available than normal. We put a lot of our day-to-day projects that are ancillary projects on hold. That has been very clear that we're making more time to deal with the issues at hand. So we are very involved. We talk to a large majority of our franchisees on a daily basis right now. So we're happy to handle any of those phone calls. One thing I'd just like to touch on in closing of this question is we are working day in and day out tremendously with our franchisees on the transition from in-clinic care to telemedicine. We have all of the resources on Advantage that Randy pointed to earlier in the call. We are very familiar with the Doxy platform, and we are here to help you in that transition. Keeping in mind that my team is not billing experts, we are not experts in your local state laws, but we are here to help you in that transition with patient care. So if you were clinics that have opted for a temporary closure without considering telemedicine, please reconsider and reach out to your local consultant for that assistance. Back to you, Randy.
Okay, great. One last question here before we turn it back to Ed. So the question is about the EMR. If we don't have blood pressure and pulse, what do we record in the weekly chart since it's the required field in order to close the encounter? So Dr. San Miguel or John, could you answer that question?
I think John's trying to talk. Let's wait for him to. So from my standpoint, and John can maybe help me on this because I don't know the back end of the IT system, but one of the things, if you just not have a blood pressure, I would probably enter, if you're allowed to enter zeros.
Dr. San Miguel, can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
We removed the need for you to enter in anything with regards to vitals or blood pressure inside that acute visit. So if you should not choose, if you haven't done any vitals or blood pressure, do not choose that you've done someone in the drop-down list, and you should be able to get right through the acute visit without having to enter anything in any of those fields.
Okay, thank you, John. John, one more quick question. Can you just clarify that Doxy.me is not integrated into the EMR? Can you just clarify that quickly?
Yes, I can clarify that. It is not integrated in any way with your EMR. You would do all your documentation of the medical record inside the EMR. You are using Doxy.me simply for a face-to-face consultation through video.
Okay, great. We had a few questions about that integration. Okay, so thank you for submitting all of your questions. Please continue to submit them, and we'll address more of them next week. And Ed, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, Randy, thank you. Let's, for a moment, focus on the good that might come from this. What did we learn? How did we successfully review our brand and adapt and evolve? When the economy recovers, a lot of the innovation that we are instituting might rev up our growth way beyond the economic downturn. Let's keep eyes open to ways that we can grow revenue and add value to our franchisees. Remember what our leaders have said in the past. Necessity is the mother of invention. Stay well, stay focused, stay tuned, and remember, hope is contagious too. Thank you all for attending. We'll visit with you next Wednesday. If you have questions, contact your FPCs. Thanks again. Keep it up.
Thank you, everyone.
Randy, can we stay on as a group?